Alright, this video is going to be about error handling in VBA. So the idea behind error handling is that when we're coding, we'd like to get rid of most errors, prevent most errors from happening. There are some errors that we can't prevent from happening just because it depends on user input, or there are various other reasons that an error might come up. These errors are what's referred to as runtime errors. So let's take a look at how we handle runtime errors. Go ahead and bring up the code editor. Alright, so let's go ahead and insert a module, and let's go ahead and make a sub-procedure that will delete a worksheet. Let's call it delete sheet. And we're going to pass into it a sheet name as a string. And the idea is we're just going to go ahead and have it delete the sheet. Now, a couple things we have to do if we're going to delete a worksheet. One is if we don't turn off the application alerts, display alerts, it'll actually prompt the user, do you really want to delete this worksheet? Yeah, and you don't want to calling this through code. We don't really want to have to prompt the user for that. So let's go ahead and turn that off. Application.display alerts equals false. And then let's go ahead and delete the sheet. So out of all the sheets, we want the one named sheet name, and we just want to delete it. And that should work okay. So we've got to have at least one extra sheet out here. So we've got sheet 1 and sheet 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and call delete sheet, and I'm going to pass it then the name of sheet 2. Which is sheet 2. And when I execute this line by pressing enter, you'll see that sheet 2 is going to be deleted and sheet 1 will become the active sheet. And that works just fine. Now the trouble is, if I try to delete this again, it's going to tell me that I've got an error, subscript out of range. I'm trying to identify sheet 2 by this sheet name right here, and it says there's no name, there's no sheet that has that name. And so this is a runtime error. Syntactically, this is just fine. There's no problem with this. This is spelled right. This is a string variable. That's what it's supposed to be. The delete method is correct. The only problem is when we try to execute this, the line fails because there is no sheet 2 to execute. And so let's just do this. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up what's referred to as an error trap. So here's how we do an error trap. We're just going to say on error, resume next. This is really kind of a dangerous statement. This just tells the interpreter if there's an error after this, just skip it and move on. But when an error happens still, it's going to set some information in the ERR object so that we can actually read it and see what's happening. So now it won't stop on this line. Instead, it will just move on without doing it, but it will set a flag here. So let's do this. We'll say if ERR.number is equal to, what was that? Well, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and comment this out and take this back up, and I'll run it from here. Just run one line at a time. Okay, now that error hasn't happened. I mean, it didn't stop, it didn't execute, but it didn't stop us either. So now I'm just going to come here and say I want to see the number, the description. So there's the description, but I can also see the number of it as well. So that's error number 9, subscript out of range. So at this point, if I get an error number 9, I know what's happened. We've tried to execute a worksheet that you just can't execute. If that's the case, I'm okay with that. So if error equals number 9, I mean, all this delete sheet's trying to do is make it so that sheet doesn't exist. I really don't want it to fail because it already doesn't exist. In a sense, it's already accomplished its mission without even having to do anything. And so in this case, if we have error number 9, then that's just fine. We're okay. Otherwise, if it's error number 9, or if it's error number 0. Error number 0 is no error at all. So if it's either one of those, we're okay. But if it's not either one of those, then we've got a problem still. Otherwise, great, we'll just move on. Now, what we do want to do here is we want to say, hey, after this, if there's this idea of just turning off the error handler is kind of a dangerous thing. So we want to use this very narrowly just around the code that we think might have the issue that we're planning for. And so this is going to suppress the default error handling behavior. Which is just displaying that error and stopping the code. The way we turn it back on is kind of a strange statement, but this is how we do it. We say on error go to 0. On error go to 0 says, hey, it really just turns back on the default error handling behavior. Re-enables the default error handling behavior. It turns out, back in the early days of basic programming, you actually used a line number to tell it where you wanted to branch to. The lowest line number that was valid was line number 1, and so when we tell it to go to line 0, that's telling it to do an impossible thing. There is no line 0. And so when we execute this, it just says, oh, we're going to go back to the default error handling condition. It's a really strange way to say it, but that's the syntax, and that's what it means. All right, so the only way that we're going to get into this part of our if statement, get into this if statement, is if we have some error and it's not error number 9. No error is error number 0. So if we haven't had an error, this is going to prevent us from coming into here. If we had number 9, we know what that is. We're not going to come in here. But any other value means we've had an error that we weren't expecting. So all we're going to do right here is just try it again. Now, trouble is that we've suppressed the error handler. So inside this if statement, I'm going to go ahead and turn the error handling back to its default behavior here as well. So now, if we try to, let's go ahead and delete a sheet here. Let's add a sheet here. That'll work. So here's sheet number 3 now. Let's go ahead and delete sheet number 3. And that should work just fine because it's going to delete it. And so we'll execute this line, and it deletes number 3. Now we're going to try to delete sheet 3 again. This time the idea is, let's go ahead and watch it. I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint here. And we'll execute this, and then we'll step through this one line at a time. That suppresses the error handler. It tries to delete it. It doesn't have an error because it's been suppressed. Now it should be error number 9. So if we take a peek at our error number here, we should see that's error number 9, just substitute out of range. That's one we're anticipating, so we should skip by this and then continue on. Now, if we try to now delete sheet number 1, that should be a different error. Let's find out what happens. So I'm going to execute that line and tries to delete it. It's going to fail because you can't delete that last sheet. So the error number that we're looking at here now, error number 1004, delete method just failed. Don't get much information. It's failed, but it didn't fail because it couldn't find the sheet. It's some other reason. So now our error number is not 0 and it's not 9, it's 1004. And so this should be false, which will let us into this if block. We turn back on the default error handler and then execute that line again, which should then just bring up the normal behavior. And we might want to look, maybe give the user a little bit more help here, but that's how we can run this error trap. So I'll go ahead and end that code. So what we might do here is we might check to see, well, we know that if the number of sheets here, if there's only one sheet in the workbook and we're trying to delete it, then that could be a problem. And so we could even check that before we try to delete it and alert the user of the problem. But the whole point is that this ability to say, hey, listen, if there's an error, just skip it and move on, but then be able to check to see which error happened is how we set up an error trap and how we handle runtime error. There are other kind of more sophisticated ways to do this, but this is the simple one that will let you say, hey, runtime error could happen here. Let's go ahead and anticipate that and then decide what to do based on which errors happened. So that's our introduction to error handling.